Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dave Sands. Welcome to the Food Origins podcast. I'll be talking to people about their unique stories with food. And as a quick reminder, the restaurants and gear talked about on each episode can be found on my website, foodoriginspodcast.com. I appreciate your support, and thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Food Origins podcast. Today, my guest is Dave Williamson, otherwise known as Meet Dave. Dave's a comedian, pitmaster, host of his own podcast, the Meet Dave podcast, water polo coach, along with co-host of the Tony Azevedo podcast. I got to sit down with Dave on location in Los Angeles, and we talked about on being on the road, opening for Bert Kreischer, cooking and improvising on the road with a smoker, and trying some awesome food. And then along with that, we go over pretty much how we kind of know each other is Dave's dry rub seasoning that I've been using for the last year or so. And we go into his barbecue tour that he got to do all over the U.S., some of his favorite local barbecue pop-ups, and his favorite breakfast burrito spot that you're going to have to listen to the podcast to find that out. That is not going to be in the show notes. And then when this podcast comes out, Dave will probably be touring in Canada. Then he's going to come back to Nashville in Florida, and then be on tour with Bert in September. And just so you guys know, this podcast, this audio conversation will be on Dave's podcast as well, probably in the future. Appreciate you guys. This was a really fun one. A lot of good info, a lot of fun barbecue talk. And appreciate you guys all listening. Thanks for the support. Enjoy. All right, man, we're rolling.
Here we go.
Appreciate you coming on, Dave. I've got Dave Williamson here, a.k.a. Meet Dave.
That's it.
That's M-E-A-T.
I'm finally getting quite a bit of brand recognition, especially when I'm doing these shows opening up for Bert Kreischer, you know? Yep. And, I've been touring with him long enough that people are starting to know that I'm like one of the people in his like characters in his universe, you know? And so when I come out on stage, people yell out, "Meet Dave!" And I always smile when I hear someone in the audience yell that out.
How did you get that? How did that nickname or name come up?
Well, it's because I wanted to start a barbecue podcast.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of clever names, and I wanted it to be not barbecue specific because I figured I'd run out of topics and guests if it was just pitmasters, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, I wanted to be a little bit more encompassing. So I was like, I'll do meat, you know?
Yeah.
So all things meat. So then I could talk to butcher shop owners and chefs or comics who, just like barbecue also, you know, so it's a little bit more vague. And I just thought of the idea of having it like the double meaning of, meet me, like meeting people, but also meat, obviously, M-E-A-T.
Yeah.
So I threw it up on Instagram. I didn't know if it was dumb or genius. I couldn't figure it out. So I made a little fake logo and just threw it up on Instagram and said, "Thinking about starting a podcast. What do you guys think of this name?" And I just got so much positive feedback about the name specifically. Everyone goes, "That's an awesome name." So I just rolled with it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of catchy just because of the amount of syllables and, what am I doing? That's regular water, right? Thank you for this spread.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Appreciate
Taking care of them today.
A lot of hospitality goes on into this podcast.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, the rest is history. And now it's kind of worked as a nickname, you know?
It is that's why I think it's a nickname, and it plays off very well. Like, it comes off, you've got the hat that says meat on it. That's from, which barbecue joint is that from?
Central Barbecue in Memphis. Yeah, that's part of their swag, and someone sent it to me, and I'm like, I love this hat.
Yeah, and we'll get into your Memphis tour too. Your Memphis in May tour. And why don't you, going right back in, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, where you're from, where you grew up, and then, bring us up to speed.
I grew up in Miami, Florida. I thought I was going to be in the car business my whole life. My family's in the car business. And I grew up, I guess my meat tie-in or my food tie-in was that my dad was a very meat and potatoes guy. So we ate steak a lot. And we had some best friends that owned the Fuddruckers in town. And the Fuddruckers, when they first opened, I don't know if you remember this, but a lot of them had like basically butcher shops in the front window. So you could actually see them shaving the meat and breaking down a cow to then make ground beef to make the burgers.
Okay. I just remember they had those big old 1 pound, 2 pound burgers.
Yep. Yeah. Giant burgers. So I remember being a little kid and being so fascinated by that. And then just couple that with the fact that my dad really liked protein and my uncles and my dad were very big outdoorsmen. They all liked fishing and hunting and everything. So it was quite often we had big family parties where my uncle would be like smoking, amberjack or something. Or they'd have a giant roast on or something. So I grew up watching men cook.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like abnormal for me to be like, oh yeah, dudes can be into food also, Now it's very common because everyone sees the chefs on TV and it's a lot more accessible. But as a kid, I think that was an influence for me.
Awesome.
And then, I decided one day that I wanted to take my hobby of stand-up comedy and make it a profession. So I made that transition. And at that point, my wife and I were starting to have little babies and we moved out to LA. And so I could, continue to pursue comedy. And somewhere along the line of being a professional comedian, I stumbled into this hobby of smoking meat. I was traveling the country eating such awesome barbecue in Texas and North Carolina and all the places I go to do comedy. And I'd get mad when I came back to LA and there was nowhere good to eat barbecue. There is now. There wasn't back then for sure.
Yeah, I mean. So
I just told my wife one day, I'm going to teach myself. And I went to Home Depot and got a crappy smoker. Started leading into it as a hobby, and I fell in love with learning how to smoke meat. And so I quickly graduated up to a 900-pound gravity-fed smoker, put it in my front yard, built a little barbecue shack out, and then my hobby of just throwing it up on Instagram, like a lot the same story as you, more or less.
Yeah,
started becoming something I was known for.
It's crazy. That's how we met over IG, which is nuts. And Dave has quite the setup. I mean, tell us your whole setup. You've got not one grill. You have several. I know he's got a Santa Maria.
Yep.
And shout out to your brand RecTech that takes care of you. So tell us what you got. You got a full setup here.
I have a couple smokers from RecTech, pellet smokers. The last two I got from them were ones that they sent me to beta test before they, put them out on the market. So that's kind of fun to be able to see something before everybody else. The Santa Maria grill was something they were trying for a little while. It's a Santa Maria grill with technology, with blowers basically in it. And
nice.
I don't think it was a big seller for them, so they stopped making it. But I still love mine. I cook on mine whenever I can. And then I had an Assassin 32 gravity-fed smoker, which was my main big smoker, but I just sold it because I'm having a custom-made offset smoker built by SG Metalworks, which is a guy here in town who is awesome at making beautiful smokers. So I got to build my deck out a little bit so I could fit that on there when it's done in the next month or so.
Yeah, and is that like 100-gallon tank?
The one I got is it's a abnormal size. I think it's around like 220.
Okay. Yeah, it's is that serious business now?
It's gonna be a big ass smoker.
Yeah, it's got the firebox, a huge,
gigantic firebox,
chimney, and everything. Yep. Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. That's gonna be great. You'll have so much to do with that.
Yeah, it's gonna be great for content because it's a really interesting smoker and it's a little bit more authentic as far as the kind of smokers that the big boys use. And I also just wanted more practice. The gravity fed smoker honestly was it felt like cheating. It was a little easy because the charcoal does half the work for you. So I kind of wanted, even though it's more of an undertaking, I wanted the challenge of saying, I think I know how to be really good on an offset, but you don't know until you've really challenged yourself with some cooks. So I'm like, I want to cook more regularly on something that's like more like an offset, and really see whether I know how to do it or not. And if I don't, I want to get good at it.
Yeah, I mean the pellet grills are great too. I mean, especially if you are starting out and you don't have room for a large smoker, maybe you can't have that much smoke going or open fire. Obviously, I use a little Traeger that I have, and it's just because of the situation. I just don't have the space or HOA and all that crap. And you can get in there, knock out chicken, brisket, ribs, the whole 9 yards, and it's rolling, and you get to keep track of it. It's, that whole, the start of all the pellet grills is taking off like crazy.
Totally. And I don't have a problem with it at all. Back, a couple of years ago when I first started and I was listening to the opinion of people around me, I was on the same boat where I was being snobby towards people who use pellet grills. And then I started using it out of necessity because they gave us one to have on the tour bus.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I obviously can't have live fire going in and out of the tour bus. So I started using it on the road, and then I started realizing, like, man, this is kind of great. Like, the product I'm getting off of it is great. It's not like any worse or different than when I'm cooking at home. And it's making it so that we are even able to cook on the road. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
So then, I saw a place where it could be useful at my house too. So, look, I like them both. There's some nights where I need to just throw it in the rec tech, and that way I can get some sleep, and I know that it's cooking and that everything's going to be fine. And there's other times where I feel like, tending the fire and knowing that I'm controlling how much smoke is hitting the meat, and it's a little bit more of an authentic cook. But there is a place and an opportunity for both ways of using smokers to be useful, and I don't judge anybody for whichever way they decide to cook, as long as they're cooking.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Either way, whatever works for you, whatever's, your flavor, your style, and convenience, like cooking on the road. This guy, Dave's cooking all kinds of stuff on the road for the crew, Bert and the crew. And you can watch it all on Instagram happen, whether it's steaks. He just cooked I believe a 70-day or how many days?
No.
Aged
oh my God. That was
brisket.
So good.
You made this, it was aged brisket,
a dry aged brisket. Yeah. So this company, Meats by Lynn's. I've gotten to be buddies with them, and they are incredible what they do. So they provide most of the top steakhouses around the country with dry aged steaks. And so they sent me some steaks, and I was cooking a lot of the steaks on the road and just really fell in love with how good their dry aged steaks are. And then they saw that I was cooking a brisket, and so he messaged me and goes, "Hey man, have you ever tried a dry aged brisket?" And I'm like, "No, has anybody? I didn't even know that was a thing." He goes, "Let's try it out. I'll throw it in the room for you." All right. So he threw the brisket in the room for me. And, excuse me. I just had him on my podcast the other day, and I asked him this question. I said, "How did you decide how long to dry age the brisket for?" He goes, "Well, I went with 22 days because he figured I didn't want the dry age flavor to be overpowering, but I wanted you to taste it. And, is a big cut like a brisket, you still want to get that smoke to get in there, and you don't want to have to cut too much off on the outside." So there's a lot of things that go into it.
Sure.
So he, he's an expert. He chose 22 days, and then he shipped it to us on the road, and I cooked it that night, and it was so good, dude.
Yeah. It
was so good.
What made it tell us the difference, you think?
It's got that funky flavor when you dry it, just like when you dry your steak. It's like when you get a good cheese that's been aged, and it's like that blue cheese kind of funky flavor.
Yeah, just a little bit of ferment.
The funk is flavor,
Okay.
And it also makes it more buttery. The way that it breaks down in the aging process breaks down the meat. I don't think you want to go too overboard where it's like mush, but you want it to where you still want like a pull and the right texture in your mouth, but it just makes it like so like buttery, I guess is the best way to put it,
Yeah, it looked fantastic. It looked phenomenal. You guys even made, that steamed sandwich after too.
We didn't want to waste any of the brisket that was left over. So
yeah, of course
the next day we went and got a fresh loaf of bread, and we put, some sauce on it, and we put the brisket in there, and then this guy made us some fresh pimento cheese. We always get gifts dropped off the bus, so someone gave us some really nice fresh homemade pimento cheese, so we smothered that all over there, and then we put it in a gigantic steamer and steamed it up. Yeah, it was killer.
Yeah, no, it looks awesome. And then getting into eats, you guys eat well on the tour. What'd you eat growing up? Obviously your dad's steak and potatoes. My dad's kind of similar, but my mom's Japanese, so it's a totally different side of that stuff. It's a different exposure. What'd you
I
eat
noticed
growing
you
up?
do a lot of fusion stuff. You do a lot of stuff that's got like a little bit of Asian fusion in it.
For sure.
It seems like there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah, I mean, growing up half Japanese, I had East Indian godparents, tons of friends that were Japanese and Korean and just kind of diverse, San Francisco's obviously super diverse.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you either, man. I made those ribs that you made us.
Oh, okay.
They were still in the freezer.
Yeah.
And the same day when I made that brisket, I threw them in the smoker and heated them up for like 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then chopped them up, and they were great.
Okay, good.
They were great. They got. I was worried that people weren't going to eat them.
I was worried somebody, sniped them or something.
No, I was wrong. They were still in the freezer.
Okay.
So I was worried that everyone was going to be eating the brisket and not realize the ribs were sitting there. Yeah. And the ribs were gone. Everyone ate the ribs.
Okay.
So they got eaten, bud. But those are really good. Didn't that have some sort of Asian?
A little bit. It's got like kind of my mom's and a lot of people's barbecue sauce. So that's a homemade barbecue sauce, but that's got your rub on there. Mm-hmm. And I was going to get into that later, but let's get into it right now. So Dave, throughout all his barbecue and his huge passion for barbecuing and becoming a pitmaster and everything, he came up with his own seasoning. So he's got an all-purpose dry rub, and that was one of the things of how we connected. I bought it. I was like, oh, he's got a dry rub. Yeah, that's cool. I want my own seasoning someday, but let me see what it is. And
you will, bro. You will.
It's got pretzel salt and chilies and a bunch of other things, and you can kind of use it on everything. I use it on eggs and stuff, and I use it on the ribs for the rub, and then I cook that on the Traeger 5 hours, 3-2-1 method, 3 hours on, 2 hours with honey and butter, flipped over, wrapped, and then last hour barbecue sauce and finish it off. So that's how I did those ribs.
Ooh, man.
And the honey and butter trick is new to me, just because I wasn't thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And man, does that add such a dynamic flavor profile, bark. It gives it a little crust. Yeah. Even more so than just kind of running the ribs for the full 5.
You can never go wrong with butter on anything. Just adding that fat to the outside of it, and then honey. I like to bring honey out when I do salmon. I do like a honey and like whiskey kind of glaze. Mm-hmm. Just whisk it together, and then I put some of my rub in there and whisk it all together. Yeah. And then I put it over the salmon, and then I put it back in the fridge for like an hour so it kind of hardens. Yeah. And then I put it in the smoker. Yeah. And then I also like drizzling honey on burnt ends. Oh yeah, pork belly burnt ends. Yep. That's when I bust out the honey. And then sometimes on chicken wings too. I like to drizzle a little honey in there.
For sure. Or I've been doing. My wife likes honey sriracha, so we've been doing a lot of honey sriracha wings. So it's just honey, good sriracha sauce. Sure. This company Yellowbird out of Austin makes a nice sriracha that's not full of sugar. Yeah. And so you can add the honey and then boom, mix that up, toss it in. It's good to go.
But I'll answer both your questions that I diverted from.
No,
the first one of growing up and what food looked like then was, a lot of meat and potatoes, a lot of steak and potatoes at my house. My mom was a good cook, so meatloaf was one of my favorite things she cooked. Pork chops, all that kind of. We did a lot of seafood since I grew up in Miami, Florida. Mm-hmm. Tuna steaks, so tuna with like a piece of bacon wrapped around it, real hot grill, sear it. A lot of sashimi, actually. My dad loved to get fresh tuna. Okay. And then every night as my mom was cooking, my dad would slice up a little sashimi and we'd always kind of pick on it, as an appetizer. Nice. And then a lot of seafood that we caught ourselves because my parents were big boaters. So my mom had an awesome conch fritter recipe. Secret ingredient was Bisquick. And
not so secret anymore.
Yeah, conch salad. And, my mom had a recipe called grouper nantua. It was basically get fresh grouper and you make like kind of like a fish salad sort of, and then you put it on an open face like piece of bimini bread with a slice of cheese and bake it. That's one of my favorite things growing up. And lobster, of course, we went lobstering quite a bit and ate a lot of lobster. It was funny after Hurricane Andrew when everybody's houses were decimated and nobody had power for weeks. A lot of people were just eating like beanie weenies and we're eating, whatever the rescue people could come and supply and everything. And we're sitting there with a freezer full of seafood that was all defrosting. So every night we were eating lobster.
Oh my gosh.
And cooking like these feasts, just trying to eat all this stuff before it goes bad.
Oh my God. Oh, darn.
Yeah.
Lobster's so good.
And then the seasoning thing, to answer your second question, is
get us into that.
I had so many people message me and ask me what I use for rub and what I use for seasoning. And I got tired of writing it over. I'm like, you can do it yourself. It's so easy because honestly, all you need is 50-50 salt, pepper. Right? You just need kosher salt and coarse pepper, mix it up. And then if you want to throw anything in for a little pizzazz, you do it. Right.
Yeah.
And then when we were on the pandemic tour and I was cooking a ton, we're working drive-in movie theaters and I was cooking in the smoker because restaurants weren't open or we were out in the middle of nowhere in a field to do the show.
Yep.
It was harder for us to get meals. So I was cooking a ton. And I made up kind of a concoction that was just an all-purpose rub because I couldn't bring like my whole cabinet full of rubs from home in the tour bus. So I just made up a couple bottles of a concoction that I thought would work on everything.
Yeah.
And it worked out well. So this all-purpose rub is kind of a version of that. And honestly, I'm thinking about rebranding it because it really has become more like an all-purpose seasoning versus an all-purpose rub.
Yeah.
And I think that if you were to use it, like the way I use it as a rub is I take my salt and pepper mix and then I add in my Meat Dave mix, depending on how potent I want, the pepper flakes and everything.
Yep.
So I use it as an all-purpose seasoning on my eggs, like you said, on steaks, on chicken, on salad. I mean, I throw it on everything. Someone even told me they like it on popcorn.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and then when I use it as a rub, I usually use it as a rub supplement. So I'll take my salt and pepper and then I'll mix, or I'll do like a layer of something a little bit more base and then an outer layer of my rub. Because I like to go real thick with my rubs on my barbecue.
Yeah.
So if I go really thick with just my rub, it's going to be a really spicy.
It's spicy and you got that salt in there that's kind of big and chunky.
Yeah.
And that can, if you're already, you got salt and pepper. Yeah, it might be a little over, but it's good, man. I mean, I see most of the time, like people tag you and stuff. It's a lot of eggs for sure because it's just this little kick.
Yeah.
It's, there's a lot of hot sauces out there, but just to have a little sprinkle of some salt and spice.
Yeah. And honestly, I took into account that I think it's just visibly aesthetically pleasing. So when you have your eggs and you just do a layer of those, it looks cool. Little pepper flakes, little red, the paprika, the pretzel salt, like you said, it just looks cool on top of something.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of why I was like, well, I've got to make ribs or some food for you guys and use your rub, so that it's kind of handing it back to you full circle. I was like, oh, there you go. Yeah, use your rub.
Well, I got to tell you, man, one of my favorite parts of selling the rub is not only is it like something different to sell after shows as merch, like it's so much more fun to sell that than to sell t-shirts or CDs or whatever. But it's also fun because then it gives me a reason to be connected with somebody even after the show is over. So when people cook stuff and then they tag me in it and tell me they use my rub, I love that, man. And that's how I get to know people like you. You've been one of the biggest proponents of using my rub and then tagging me and stuff and basically creating content for me because your shit looks so delicious and good that I just reshare it because I want everyone to see it.
Yeah.
And,
welcome.
And so it's fun because then I build friendships like we've built.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and like you said, it's a conversation starter. And then people are like, oh, where do I get that? And then it goes on and on and on. And then we have, all the different products that we've used for someone so's rub, someone so's sauce. I gave you some bachan sauce. Shout out to bachans. I mean, they're killing it.
Killer.
Super good. Really easy to use. It's, I was telling somebody the other day that when I had it, it sounded like for me being half Japanese, it was like a ratatouille moment for me because it's like perfect flavor profile. It's not too sweet. It's not too salty. It's right down the middle. And then obviously they came out with some more flavors. But I mean, shout out to Jess and Gil and Bachans, and they're super supportive of my cooking and can't wait to talk to them more about, you know, everything in their story. But yeah, just being able to use something and then being able to just play with it. That's the fun part for me.
Yeah. 100%.
And then that's why I was like, oh, you know, hey Dave, I made ribs today. Or I smoked a chicken, you know? And so like, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I definitely I might rebrand it to all-purpose seasoning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, people could still use it.
I've been seeing that more and more lately. Like they just kind of make it a broad stroke because they don't want you to be tied. Oh, it has to be something that's barbecued, right?
And then people who aren't into barbecue but are into cooking, or at the very least eating, understand that you don't have to be a barbecue guy to buy it and as a rub. Like you can put it on anything.
Yeah. Anything you want.
Yeah. So cheese. It's a broader, you know, customer base at that point.
Yeah. You could even, I've been seeing that smoked cream cheese. You seen that?
Oh my God. That's the thing now. My rub would be awesome on that.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I always ask people, you know, you've been around, so let's get into, we'll get to the best and worst experiences maybe after you talk about kind of your tour. So Dave went on, besides being on tour for comedy, he also did his own tour.
Yeah.
Basically took a small trailer, wrapped it with Meet Dave all over it, and toured the country. Tell us about that tour and, you know, how'd that go and everything.
So I knew that, you know, I've been lucky to tour with Bert a ton over the past few years. And I knew that our last tour was winding down and I was putting together some of my own dates. And this was last summer when the world was kind of slowly starting to open back up. Shows were coming back, you know, in more traditional sense. And at first I was like, oh, cool. Comedy clubs are opening up. I'll just get to book a bunch of comedy clubs. And then what I realized is that every comedian in the world was vying for those spots. So it was very competitive to get booked at the time. So I was like, you know what? I want to do a ton of dates, not just like the ones I'm lucky enough to book because, you know, I got it before someone else. Yeah. So I was like, I'm just going to make my own venues. And now I have this barbecue following and this barbecue brand. So, and I want to help the barbecue restaurants out that have been struggling, and we're starting to reopen at the time too. So I just came up with this idea to do a comedy tour in barbecue restaurants. Yeah. So I threw it out there and started asking people if they'd be interested, and almost anyone who could do it was excited about it. Some places couldn't because there were still a lot of restrictions in their area. Sure. Or they didn't have enough staffing to handle an event. Yeah, I even looked in NorCal for you, and they were, you know, kind of open. I was trying to get you over at Horn, but we'll maybe get you over there one day. Oh, yeah, it'll happen eventually. Yeah. So, you know, people were super into the idea of doing something different. And a lot of places wanted to do it just to give back to their customer base as a thank you for all the support over the past 2 years, you know? Yeah. So it happened. So I put together a 2-month tour, and then I was like, logistically, how am I going to make this work? And so I bought a travel trailer, and I was going to need help. So I found a boyfriend and girlfriend who have become good friends of mine, who they were fans, who then became friends, basically. And they were just graduating film school. So I was like, are you guys up for an adventure? So I got them to come with me and film the whole thing, but then also help me with the production of the shows. Nice. And we went in this tiny little travel trailer that I wrapped with my picture holding up ribs on the side of it, like you said. Yeah. And we went, and I mean, it was aggressive. I mean, we went from town to town. We walked. A lot of times we'd get there a couple hours before the show, and I hadn't slept because I'd been driving, you know. Yeah. And we would totally set up a show with professional lights and the little stage and the step and repeat behind us, and you know, some of them it was like only 20 people on a Tuesday, you know, and other ones it was like over 100 people on a Friday, you know, and it was packed out. But every single show, no matter what the dynamic was just fun. I knew every single person there bought a ticket. There wasn't any comps. Everyone bought a ticket and was there because they wanted to see me, which was cool. Very cool. And so we would all eat barbecue for whoever the venue was, right? We'd all eat the barbecue. So that was kind of like breaking the ice, and I'd chit chat. And so it's kind of being my own opener, like getting to know everybody. And then I would do an hour of comedy. And then I would do a Q&A with whoever's place it was, the pitmaster, the owner, or a local barbecue personality or whatever. I'd always have a Q&A lined up. And sometimes those would last for over an hour too. And I'd have to like be like, guys, we got to go. Like they got to clean the restaurant up, you know?
Yeah.
So it was just like an experience. And then my favorite nights were when we were parked at the barbecue restaurant. And so we would do the Q&A, people would hang out, we'd have beers, shoot the shit, and then as like the night winded down, I would just sleep in the trailer at the barbecue restaurant.
Yep.
So then we would take our time like packing up, and then sit there in lawn chairs in the parking lot of the barbecue restaurant, plugged in to the wall, running our AC and running our fridge.
Yeah.
And then the Pitmaster would come in to do the night shift, and I'd go introduce myself, and he'd be like, I know who you are. I wanted to come to the show, but I had to sleep because I'm on the night shift tonight. And I'd be like, cool. Can I cook with you? Yeah, man. I'd sit back there with shoot the shit and drink a beer with the Pitmaster and ask him questions and how they do things. And then in the morning, I'd get up and there'd be the morning shift there, like prepping sides and getting the kitchen ready for that day. And I'd be in there brushing my teeth in their kitchen. And so it was like I was living at barbecue restaurants. So it was so fun to me, man. I was like, man, how is this not a TV show?
Maybe it will be.
Yeah, I'm working on it, man. I'm working on it.
It's cool. Yeah, you got I also was going to talk about the midnight behind the scenes. Yeah. You're like, oh, I'm sitting here. And you're like, hey, that's the Pitmaster going into the smoker room.
Yep.
I better go follow him. Yeah. And I mean, that's the best when you get to see everything rolling before it gets served.
Yep.
You lift up those doors and woof.
It was a blast, man.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like it
was a great idea, man.
The smokers were great. The shows were great. The food was great. But I met a lot of cool people, mostly both the fans who came out, and then also just like, you know, these husband and wives who went all in on opening a barbecue restaurant in some small town in South Carolina or whatever, you know? And so just hearing their stories was really cool too.
Yeah. I mean, I won't have you pick any of them out as far as best or whatever, but let's get into, you visited Memphis in May.
Oh yeah, that was a blast.
What's that like? Tell us what that's like.
Well, so I've
never been, so I'm sure there's a lot of people curious.
I had popped in as a I don't know, an audience, no, a fan, I guess. I don't know. I'd popped
exhibitor guest.
Yeah, I'd popped into a barbecue
vendor guest.
Yeah, a barbecue festival once or twice before, but I've never gone and immersed myself like that.
Yeah,
and so it was, you know, a lot of new experiences for me. But yeah, basically, the guys at Central Barbecue, basically everybody has a tent, right? So the guys who are there competing for the weekend, they buy a section of grass, and that becomes their home base, their headquarters. So some people go as simple as putting up a giant tent with their smokers in the back, a porta potty, and some tables and chairs.
Yeah.
Some people pay a contractor to come in and build a multi-level, like they build structures.
Wow.
So they have it's just crazy.
Build a little tower.
Yeah, but the bottom line is that there's 100, if not more, of these spaces that people bought and then are throwing parties, their own party. And each one is a different cook team, basically, you know?
Yeah.
So we went and did a show. We got hired by Central Barbecue to go do my show at their tent for their guests. Yeah. We weren't sure if it was going to work, if like people would be into it or it would be too distracting or what. Ended up being awesome. Had a blast.
Yeah.
The show was fun. The set I did was fun. And then hung out, drink beers. Got to pop in and kind of pretend like I was on people's cook teams, like just seeing what they were cooking and helping sample, taste test, you know. And then we just hung out and partied for the whole weekend. And it was the most I've ever felt like a celebrity for sure. Because I was walking around and people were like, hey, meet Dave.
Yeah.
And like, well, what are you doing here? You know?
Yeah.
And then pulling me in, because getting invited into the tents is the hardest part. And so the fact that I was getting invited to go hang out with all these different people was so fun.
And it's all barbecue.
Yeah, it's my world.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. I would do that. I don't think I'm going to have an opportunity to go this year because we actually have tour dates on that week.
Yeah.
But I will try to go back to Memphis in May every year that I can for the rest of my life. It was that much fun.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. I'd like to get out there. And best and worst experiences. I always ask everybody, what's their best and worst experiences, restaurants, anywhere in the world? Do your favorites. If you got a couple favorites, shout them out.
Oh, man.
We'll get into the local spots. We can talk about local stuff here in LA, but you got some good ones? I know you do got some good ones, but
yeah, I mean, best experiences is just, well, first of all, eating with Bert is a lot of fun. Bert knows how to plan a party or an event or an experience.
Sure.
So a lot of times if we go into a nice restaurant, he'll just tell the server, he'll empower the server to say, bring us what you think we should have. So we did that at a sushi restaurant in Austin, and it was so much fun because the server was really into it, and she was excited to curate what we were going to eat and plan the order it was going to come out. And I mean, it was next level. And then there's actually in Austin, there's this other restaurant we went to called Red Ash. That was, I mean, just next level.
I saw that one. Yeah. Okay.
And then, I don't know. I mean, best experiences too is just, I think, a lot of what I've done that I was just talking about which is going into these barbecue restaurants and people being excited that I am at their restaurant. I mean, it still blows my socks off. And then telling me to come back and check out their pits and, you know, just excited that I'm there experiencing their restaurant. You know?
Yeah, I think for guys like us that love to cook, it's an extra bonus that you're back there seeing everything go down and being able to experience that.
That's why I started the podcast, is because I wanted an excuse I wanted to learn from people and meet them.
Yeah.
But I was already going to barbecue restaurants when I was on the road. So I was like, I might as well have an excuse to reach out in advance and tell them like, hey, I'm performing comedy in your town. This is who I am. And then, you know, usually when you sit down and do an interview with them, they just tell you like, hey, you don't have to pay for your meal and here's a free t-shirt. Yeah. And so I was kind of like, hey, this is a good arrangement. But then I started getting into like, man, I'm really becoming good friends with a lot of these people, and I'm learning that, and I respect them. And I mean, pitmasters and restaurateurs are my heroes. Yeah. I'm a little, you know, I've been around a lot of entertainers. I've been around a lot of famous people. So I don't really get starstruck, but it's funny how much I've started respecting and admiring pitmasters and restaurateurs.
Yeah. And for people that don't cook at all, they need to understand how much it takes to get the ship rolling. There are so many aspects to the restaurant. There's so many aspects to barbecue. There's so much time involved. You know, that brisket's been cooking for 18 hours, most likely, on some of the best places around. You know,
it's
sometimes even longer than that, because it's the prep, it's the, you know, getting the smoker ready, setting it in there, keeping an eye on it, getting someone to keep an eye on it for every hour or every 2 hours, and then that's just the brisket. We're not talking about anything else. Yeah, you know, and sausage, and then just getting the whole restaurant. And they've had it rough. These last 2 years have been absolutely devastating. There's some restaurants that just didn't make it. I feel bad for them. You know, they put some of them, you know, that was their whole life, is that restaurant, and it's gone. Yep. And some of them are very iconic. I'm sure there's some down here that were like, holy crap, I never expected them to disappear. And, you know, they're trying to get more help for them with loans and stuff, and the restaurant projects, you know, that are trying to help them out. But it's a rough thing, and people need to respect that. Yeah,
100%, man. Yeah, and especially just like when you're looking at barbecue versus any other restaurant you can open, like you gotta admire anyone who's willing to bite off that responsibility, I guess, because you could open a burger place, and any restaurant is an undertaking, but one that takes 18 hours to cook the food you're serving versus throwing it on the grill for a few minutes, obviously the degree of difficulty is much higher.
Yeah, for sure. And let's get into, you got any bad experiences? You got a lot of good ones.
Well, my bad experiences were like when I'd go to barbecue restaurants here in LA, and I would just get mad because I'm like, why would you open up a barbecue restaurant if you're going to just half-ass it and not actually cook shit in real smokers and just put liquid smoke and cook it in the oven and, you know, and cheat everything. And I'm like, oh.
Sauce on everything.
Yeah. So that's when I was like, I kept getting disappointed, and I was like, I'm just going to teach myself, you know? Yeah. It's something's going to probably pop in my head in like 5 minutes of like, a very obvious bad experience.
Yeah, keep it in the back of your mind. And then getting into local stuff. We're here in LA. Appreciate Dave coming out and happy to meet each other out here and get this podcast done. But local spots in LA, you got some favorites? I know you do.
Well, specifically for barbecue, my favorite places in LA are honestly the pop-up guys. You know, there's a lot of dudes who I've had on my podcast before, like Dustin Bart's Barbecue and Barbacoa Boys and Smokey Jones, who pop up at the breweries or, you know, events and stuff like that. I mean, those are the guys who are really doing the most authentic barbecue because it's hard in LA. It's difficult to get real smokers out here like you can in Texas. Texas, you just throw a smoker in a parking lot and off you go. Here, the health codes and things like that, they make it a little bit more difficult. So these guys either have to get really good at using indoor smokers and replicating the product, you know, or they have to, you know, find loopholes where they can actually have smokers like Heritage Barbecue, which you might want to stop out on your way down to San Diego, by the way.
Which spot?
Heritage Barbecue, it's called. It's down in San Juan Capistrano. That's become a very popular spot, and they have 2 gigantic smokers. There's a place out east towards Fontana that I just went to called Spirit of Texas, and that guy's a really cool guy and has gigantic 1,000-gallon smokers in the parking lot. So, you know, the people are figuring out how to do it now in LA where they have those authentic smokers. But other local spots, man.
And it doesn't have to be barbecue, you know. You probably got some other favorites.
I'm working my way there.
The brain is churning. I can see it.
There's my wife and I, our favorite restaurant to go on date night is a place called Playa Provisions in Playa del Rey, and there's a famous chef named I think it's Brooke. Her last name's Williamson. I know that, but I think it's Brooke. She's a TV personality and you know, was on Top Chef or something like that. But it's a really cool concept because the restaurant area is awesome. Then they have a hidden whiskey bar in the back and a little ice cream counter up front. Ooh. And so it's kind of a multi concept place. But that's one of our favorite spots to go for a date night. And I mean, there's lots of great Mexican food out here. Tons. Of good, yeah. You know, growing up in Miami, we had great Cuban food there, and so I've traded that for good Mexican food here.
Yeah, you're correct on that. Playa Provisions. It's Top Chef winner Brooke Williamson and her husband Nick Roberts.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And now I will tell you the main spot. I mean, there's like the cliche answers like Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles is an awesome spot here, and Randy's Donuts and all those places. But I will say if you come to the LA area and you're looking for a culinary experience, place you would never find unless you were listening right now and heard me say it, is there's a little sandwich shop in Seal Beach, which is just past Long Beach, on their little main street there on Seal Beach. And there's a place called Nick's Deli. Don't confuse it with, there's a couple other places called Nick's around Long Beach. This is Nick's Deli in Seal Beach. And they have what I think is the best breakfast burrito on earth. I don't know what makes it so good. It's got like chorizo, and whereas a breakfast burrito, normally you can unwrap it and you can recognize all the ingredients. Like, you know, oh, there's the ham, there's the egg, there's the bacon, whatever. This is just like, it's all mushed together into some sort of random consistency and then wrapped into a burrito and then dunked in salsa. And it is so satisfying for whatever reason. I've been eating there for 20. When we used to come out for vacation, we'd make a special trip down to get a bunch of Nick's breakfast burritos.
That sounds awesome. And then, I mean, that's a good list right there.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. And then I get into, you know, gear and stuff we were going to talk about. Why don't you tell us your relationship with RecTech? You've been doing a lot of content and doing a lot of cool stuff with them. Yeah,
you know, they've just always been supportive of me. I met them when I first started doing theaters with Bert. One of the first weekends, we were doing a show at the Tabernacle in Atlanta, Georgia. And RecTech is based out of Augusta. And so a bunch of their guys, I guess they had just started a relationship with Bert because they mailed him a smoker. Mm-hmm. And so they drove up to the show and they brought us the little travel smoker to put in the bus. And they didn't know anything about me at the time. And I just started talking their ear off about, oh my God, this travel smoker is awesome and I'm going to use it so much. And why I started asking. And so they really enjoyed talking to me as much as I enjoyed talking to them about barbecue. So I just kind of hit it off with them. And then ever since then, they've been very supportive of everything I do. And I mostly really think they have an awesome product, and I think they have awesome people at their company.
Yeah.
Their customer service is second to none. Anyone who I've recommended RecTex to and they bought, and then if they did have a problem, they call, they get it taken care of like super easily.
That's really good to hear that, you know, they're behind their product too.
Totally.
It's easy to sell something and then not be able to, you know, talk about it afterwards. You know, it's like, here you go, see you later.
Well, these days when you're mailing something, because, you know, everything gets shipped.
A lot of stuff's online.
A lot of stuff's going to get dented, or it just shit's going to happen when, you know, the shipping company has it and it's out of your hands. So, you know, if a panel comes and it's dented, I just know that you can actually call, get a human being on the phone, and they're like, hey, man, we're going to send you a new panel. Don't worry about it, you know? And the technology, I mean, I've beat mine up driving around the country. When I was doing that barbecue tour, I had a little RecTex on the back bumper of the trailer, basically. So that thing got beat to hell going down the highway for 2 months. Still, if I plug it in, we'll hold temp, no problem.
Yeah, and it's you're using a pellet smoker, and it's got a, what's it got on there?
Well, it's called a Trailblazer 340, and it's just, you know, it's just a little 340 square inch space that you plug in and set the temp, and off you go. It's got two probes, and it's just a badass little smoker. And you can get the aftermarket like a shelf. So if you're gonna do ribs, you can do 2 racks of ribs on the bottom and 1 on top. And the thing's a little warrior, and that's the same one that we have in the tour bus. So yeah, they've just, you know, that's the relationship. Is just that I believe in them and they believe in me, and we just try to collaborate and help each other as much as possible. And I went on my barbecue tour, did a show for them. All their employees, basically. And I've met up with them at Memphis in May and different events. And, you know, the main guys have become friends of mine.
Yeah,
and they're just awesome. They're just good people.
You even took a couple customer service calls, right?
I did when I was there. We were day drinking and, you know, shooting content and everything. And then we went up to their the customer service floor there is so funny, because normally you would think like, oh, customer service, that's an entry level job. It's going to be a lot of like young, fresh faced people, or, you know, or it's outsourced to another country, right? Their customer service floor is so funny because it's cubicles and it's guys with the headsets like you would expect, except for it's like dudes with mullets and mustaches and pot bellies, and it's like barbecue dudes taking the calls, right?
Yeah.
So when we were there, when I was there, we were hanging out and drinking beers or whatever, and then I was like, "Hey, can I take a call?" And they were like, "Yeah." So I threw the headset on and I took the call and walked the guy through his problem.
That's cool. And then you've got one at home. You've got a couple at home, right?
Yeah.
You got a bigger one at home?
I do. Yeah, I got a 1250, and I got 2 1250s basically.
Yeah. And how much is that? Like, how many racks of ribs does that hold if you were to stack it?
I mean, I could probably do 8 on that one.
Ooh,
at least 6 at the least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could probably go 4 on both racks.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the Meet Dave Shack right there.
You got it.
For sure. Is there any other gear you like? Any other tools in the kitchen that you like? I know, you know, obviously some knives and stuff, but
getting into cutting boards now. Neanderthal Fire Company. Those guys are the jam. They make really nice. If you want to get like your husband or your dad a nice gift, get them a cutting board from Neanderthal Fire Company. Knives is going to be. I have a couple decent knives, but I think that's going to be my next obsession, is getting a nice set of knives. And you know, I have a good brisket slicing knife, and I have a good like all-purpose kitchen knife. But I think I'm gonna get into more like specialized, you know, knives. Things gonna be my next.
Yeah, I mean, you get a custom one done.
Yeah, that'll be the next rabbit hole.
Meet Dave on.
I do. I have my all-purpose knife is one that dude, Small Plate Chefs on Instagram. He made it for me, and he does really cool
very
work.
Nice.
Man, I mean, a good squirt bottle is important.
Yeah. What do you put in there? Do you put apple cider vinegar?
Apple cider vinegar mostly.
Do you do apple juice too, or no?
You know, it depends what I have.
Yeah.
But apple cider vinegar is usually. I mean, dude, I've been on the road and just needed to improvise, and I've done everything from whiskey, beer, water. Yeah. I mean, whatever I have, I use.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Man, I want to keep talking gear though.
Yeah, there's.
I'm a simplest. You know, I like to use just a dish rag to pick the meat up. You know,
right.
So I'm always acquiring, you know, clean rags from places.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some new stuff. I mean, the probes are on the smokers, but I know that other companies a lot of guys have been using those probes or thermometers and stuff. That
I need to
get it just right.
Yeah, I need to up my thermometer game. I kind of just use whatever thermometer someone gives me, and then I use it till it breaks.
I got some. I'll tell you offline. There's some cool ones coming out that are out there. They're wireless. So yeah. I have one of the meter ones that you put in. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's it.
Mine's an older generation though.
Okay.
And
hey, meter, send Dave a new one.
Yeah, I need a new one because my smokers that I'm working with now, like sometimes
Dave's, both of us.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, they're really cool. Everyone's using them. I've seen them all over the place. I think Traeger's got an investment in them. Maybe they are co-owners or something. But yeah, it's wireless. Gives you the temp right away. You can follow it on your phone.
I got out of the habit of using it because in my Assassin, the walls were so thick that it wasn't getting a good signal, through it. So I got out of the habit, but I should dust it off and use it in my Rectex.
But I appreciate a lot of people wonder, like, how do I cook a steak? And it's like, well, you got to cook it and you got to learn how to cook it. Yeah. You got to know what it feels like, and going through that process yourself without cheating, so to speak, with the thermometer, you'll figure it out. You'll know what medium rare feels like.
Yep. Practice makes perfect.
You'll know that you need to pull it out and let it rest before you slice it up, so it doesn't, dry up.
Yep. 100%.
And that just comes with a little bit of, trial and error.
Man, you know what else? Speaking of gear, what I haven't used it recently, but was really fun for a little while, is at a garage sale, someone was selling a light box. Okay. So, they guess they had a jewelry business. So they had this little light box where they could take photos that really popped with different, you could switch out the color of the background. So I bought that so that I could put a plate with a steak on it or a cutting board with a brisket on it and take really cool photos of my barbecue. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I haven't used it in a while. I'll have to pull it out.
Well, I think I think I was telling you this the other day is my Instagram went from showing other people's food, restaurants and stuff. Then it became my food. And then, I was taking most of my photos inside. And if you take a look at a lot of stuff the guys are cooking, you have an outdoor area, and that's the best place to take the photo on an offset light, so it's not direct sunlight, and get that. It comes out so nice. Yeah. And the detail on it is great. So you have that outdoor setup, you got your light box right there, man.
100%. Yeah, that setup that I have outside, I built that with my son the first couple weeks of the pandemic, because I had my smokers and I had my little corner in my yard, and I built a deck. It was actually a garden. So it was a garden that my wife and I let go to shit. And then I bought that big smoker and I needed a place to put it. And I'm like, I'm just going to turn the garden into a deck. So I just decked over. Because the framework was already there. I just had to put the 2x4s over the top, Yeah. So then that was my platform that my big smoker was on. Yeah. And then I always I got the Rectech, and I was like, it was just in my yard, Yeah. So I was like, I need to build this out a little bit. So the first week of the pandemic, I extended that deck into an L shape. So it kind of took up the whole corner of my yard. And then my son and I built a little roof over it, and it was all with wood we just kind of accumulated through our neighbor. I bought a few nice pieces for the framework, but other than that, it was all one of my neighbors had just pulled down their old fence because everyone was doing projects at that time. Yeah. So I took his old wood and repurposed it, and refabbed it. And then, I got a bunch of pallets from the brewery, and I took them apart, and I used that wood. So I really sourced it from everywhere. I only spent $300 building the whole little shack.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it came out looking cool. And you're right, for the content and for video and photos, it was such a cooler backdrop. And that's, I knew I was gonna be doing a ton of content during the pandemic as well. So for me, I'm like, I need this little area for to have a cool backdrop for my content.
Yeah, I mean, most people just have an outdoor patio table and chairs. Dave's got an entire barbecue restaurant in the backyard. Front yard,
front yard.
It's actually his front. I've never been to his house, but I know it's in the front yard. You got the mailman's coming, and they're like, "Ooh, what's going on?"
That's my favorite thing. Is I sit there in the front yard and I'm doing a brisket overnight, and the people who come by, it's like the early morning dog walkers are out at like 5 a.m. and then the joggers come out at like 6 a.m. and then the people taking their kid to the parks go by at like 8 a.m. And so all morning long, is people like, "Ooh, what are you cooking? Smells good." And
people started putting orders. As everyone said, "Hey, I got a rack of ribs in the fridge. Can you throw that in there?"
Oh, totally. So my neighborhood knows like that. Certain days I'll definitely be smoking meat, or they smell that it's going and they'll pull stuff out and be like, "Hey, can we throw this in?" Or they just know that I always cook extra. So like, "You're going to have extra today?" I go, "Yeah, save me a rack." And then they just give me, they just throw me $20 or $30 or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And so I've totally done that. On 4th of July, one year I wanted ribs. So I'm like, well, I'm going to cook 2 racks of ribs for me and my guests. And I put in 21 racks of ribs. So I just put it on my neighborhood Facebook page, and I go, I got 19 racks of ribs to sell to whoever, first come, first serve at 2 p.m. Yeah. And people just showed up. And then now, sometimes when I always cook more, if I don't know how many guests are coming over or whatever. Yeah. And so if I don't want anything to go to waste, so I'll just throw it up on the neighborhood Facebook page and say, "Hey, I'm going to have some extra, message me for address and to place an order." Yeah. And then people have bought from me before, so they already know where I live. So they'll circumvent the messaging me and just show up at my house. And I'm like, "No, I needed to keep track of who I promised it to." Yeah. So I didn't cook that much. I'm going to run out. Like,
totally.
So it has gotten out of control before like that.
Yeah. I'm afraid if my smoker gets bigger, that's going to happen. I mean, I love cooking for other people. I'm glad you got to test out the ribs I made and brought you guys some like black garlic chicken, and then the Texas Twix, those are fantastic. Yeah, I mean those are cool. That was a cool recipe that I was playing around with, and
for people who don't know that he made us some like basically candy bars that mimicked Twix, but I think were a little bit more sophisticated, and they were fantastic.
Yeah, it's shout out to Alex out in Hawaii. Her and her husband are awesome cooks. They were supposed to open a sourdough pizza restaurant. He's really good. Fantastic. Yeah, he's really good with sourdough. A lot better for your gut, gut health and stuff. And she had this recipe, and I'm like, "What is that?" And she's like, "Oh, it's Twix, but it's a little bit on the healthier side." And so it's got dates and nut butter for the caramel. It's got shortbread obviously for the cookie, and then it's dipped in dark chocolate. So I made Dave and the crew on tour. And they loved it. It's good. It goes well. Yeah. It goes well after you guys have been working hard.
Yeah, we devoured it.
Yeah, it was good, man. And I think like if the smoker gets bigger, people are going to be hitting me up to say, "Hey," and I want them to, that oftentimes they see something on my Instagram. They're like, "Do you own a restaurant or something?" Yeah. And I'm like, "No, that's just the white plate, the fancy white plate, because it looks good and so you can see what I'm cooking, and it gives you an idea, and hopefully I've inspired you to to cook out of your range and try something new." So I'm always playing around with stuff, and then I'd like to get a bigger smoker and then say, "Hey, you need a rack of ribs done? I'll do it, no problem." And then just pay me, come pick it up.
I couldn't figure you out because you were tagging me and stuff, and I was like, I don't know who this guy is, but he's making like amazing looking food every single day. So I'm like, he either owns a restaurant, runs catering, or he just really likes cooking great shit for his wife. I just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, and I have the training. We didn't know each other for a short time, but I have culinary training, went to culinary school, cooked professionally for 5 years all over the Bay Area. Really good restaurants, and then catering services, then corporate food service, and then kind of got burnt out from there. And I just kept going, like all my other careers throughout everything. I just kept cooking. Yeah. And I grew up cooking with my mom a lot, and then cooking like out and camping and stuff. And, I'm always the guy making sure the bacon's crispy, making sure the eggs aren't overcooked. And that kept me out of cleaning, during camp times. Like, I'll cook, you guys clean. They're like, okay, cool. The food will come out correctly. It won't be green. The eggs won't be green, and the bacon will be crispy. And so that's and that's my journey. And then, I truly enjoy it. It's almost like therapy to me. I think you might find it therapeutic too.
100%.
There's a lot of guys out there that do.
And that's the deal I always make too. I'll do that every time I go. I cook, you clean.
Yeah, and it's a good trade-off.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll take it any day of the week. That ends in Y. And then it's just so I've been cooking, and like I told you, I started showing everyone else where to eat, because I knew good spots to eat. When you're into food, you know, people hit you up all the time, I'm sure, and say, hey, Dave, where do I go in LA? I'm here. Tell me where to go. And so I started doing that, and I was like, well, why am I referencing all these other businesses that I have no relationship with other than that I've been there maybe? And then I was like, well, you know, my wife was like, you just start showing people your cooking, and then if they want to learn, you can tell them, you can teach them. And it's kind of growing into this podcast. So it's kind of grown into this podcast. This project is, you know, where it's at right now. And I want to talk to people about their origin stories, what they're up to. And then obviously, like you, who's passionate about barbecue and food, that's what we want to hear. And we want to hear the good stuff. We also want to hear the bad stuff. And then, you know, the cool stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where it's at, man.
You know, it's funny. Like I've been trying to rack my brain to give you like a good story for when you said like a bad experience.
Yeah.
And I know I've had some, but I don't think I hold on to those. I think I just push them out of my head, and I have so many, like, I'm thinking of so many like the good places I've been to, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, if you follow Dave, it's
at Dave W Comedy.
There you go. And DaveWilliamson.com on if you want to get his rub or follow him on his tour. And I think you're doing, you know, kind of wrap things up here, but you're going to do another barbecue tour, right?
So yeah, I'm going to do.
At least you're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I'm with Bert really heavily. I'm on all his dates through the middle of May. Okay. And then the summer, yeah, I got my own dates coming up. So I'm you know, booked in some more traditional comedy clubs, you know, like a normal comedy show sense. So I'm headlining the Chicago Improv at the beginning of July, and I'm going to be headlining Rumors Comedy Club up in Winnipeg, Canada in August, and a couple other gigs that should be on the books here pretty soon this summer. And I am doing some barbecue centric shows. I'm going to be at the Big Green Egg Festival at the end of July, which is just outside Columbus, Ohio. And I'm going to do I think a barbecue themed show out of Zany's in Nashville around that same time. But I think it's going to be a little different than the tour I did last year. It's going to be a traditional comedy show, but I'm going to incorporate into maybe surprising some of the audience members with some steaks from Meats by Lynn's, you know. So I'll cook up a steak and surprise them with it at their table.
Yeah.
And maybe do something like bring in one of my buddies who lives in the area to do a barbecue pop-up in the parking lot. So yeah. And then I'm trying to put together actually a barbecue weekend here in LA. Comet Space Brewery wants to collaborate on something maybe in June. So yeah, keep an eye on my website or on my Instagram, and I got all that stuff should be posted pretty quickly as I'm planning out my summer.
Perfect. Thanks everybody. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, you got it, Dave.
All right, man. We're out.
See ya.
And as a quick reminder, the restaurants and gear talked about on each episode can be found on my website, foodoriginspodcast.com. I appreciate your support, and thanks for listening.